you. Thank you.
Last year I did my first carving last July and delivered it to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to the first of the original 17 families. And I delivered it on the 5th anniversary of my friend's death at his grave. Gave it to his mom.
Oh boy. Sorry guys. I didn't
That's
know
okay.
anyone was here.
Oh, did you take off work?
Yeah.
You did? Andy contacted me like on Thursday and was like, these people want to get in contact with you. And I was like, okay. So I met Andy Biggio last year at the Kansas Wounded Vet Run. He runs a nonprofit organization called the Boston Wounded Vet Run. But it's spread through 19 states, and I met him at Kansas in 2016. The end of last year, he posted about a Marine, his house burning down. I contacted Andy the next day and was like, hey, why don't I do a carving and I'll give it to you guys, auction off, sell whatever proceeds going to him. And I drove out here from Oklahoma and they auctioned it off with the proceeds going to the organization, which in turn, helps the 5 veterans that they honor each year. On each carving is 17. It's the name of my company, I guess.
Does it come from something in particular?
Yeah, we had 17 guys that were killed, so that's what my...
To remember them all?
But yeah, this is all one piece. The helmet's separate, but it fits down on here. And
Wow. How long have you been carving?
a year.
Really?
Yeah.
You jumped right in.
This one was in D.C. You can see the Vietnam. It was at the Vietnam Wall. It was at the saluting Marines stood in front of it.
So it's a mix of chainsaws and hand tools. Kind of.
All the carving is done with the chainsaw. But then I take a grinder and kind of smooth out all the surfaces
Yeah.
with a flap disc.
Do you spend time with the log before you start? I have friends that carve and they just kind of stare at it for a while.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of know where I want to make my cuts, but you still have to kind of like see what you're doing before you even do it.
Yeah.
First carving was last July, and I contacted a guy, Clayton Koss, a couple months before that, and he's in Oklahoma. So he let me come to his house, he mentored me, and we carved the first one together in 2 days. And then the next day, I drove up to Minneapolis, and then I gave it to my friend's mom on the 5th anniversary of his death at his grave. I did the second one in Yakima, Washington, and then drove it up there and gave it to them on the 6th anniversary of their son's death. And then I did a third one recently back in June, 2 months later, up in Douglas, Wyoming. Right before I came out here to Boston, I did the 4th, San Antonio, Texas, and then tomorrow I leave to deliver one to Canton, Ohio. And it's the whole reason I started them is for all the guys we lost in 2011. So the unit we replaced in Afghanistan was 3-5 Dark Horse. They had I think it was 29 or 28 KIA. The time that they were there and we were there was known as the deadliest place in the world. We can't forget that the families have the same problems or worse. They're out there struggling. They're out there struggling with the loss of their son or daughter or husband. I want to do it because I want the families to know that their loved ones are not forgotten. You can see the gratitude they have. They're very grateful. The last one in San Antonio, she was like, she said, I have no words, I can't. It's still a challenge because I'm meeting this family for the first time at their son's grave. To me, it's just the way that I give back to them. So my intention is also to visit all the graves.
Thinking about Anthony's story and seeing him work, I talked to him a lot about how much it reminded me of woodblock printing and how I feel like that aesthetic makes a lot of sense for the visuals of his work. And I showed him a couple artists that reminded me of some of his work, like Jorge Posada, who made amazing woodblock prints. That texture of very sharp hand-cut visuals, I think will translate the story of his work quite well. I was interested in participating in this project for a bunch of reasons. In particular, connecting with a community that I really admire and would love to make something meaningful with. I got to meet Anthony yesterday. We started the day by looking at some of his tools that he uses to carve some of the sculptures for the 17 project. And I was asking him questions about his tools and immediately drawing them and drawing his story. And usually when I'm doing a project, I do a lot of drawing to kind of understand what I'm looking at and get a better sense of the story behind the thing I'm designing. The story is very captivating. He kind of got it like right away. He showed me the sculpture, he said the number, and it just kind of tells itself. There's a real dominance to this idea of 17 and like the nature of the piece that he made by hand. It's like, well, it's right there. Like, and then it was just about kind of pulling out some other bits of inspiration, like the textures in the wood. Maybe even like a base that alludes to what it was carved out of. So we can have like a tree trunk, the wood grain going on in there. So some of the elements of the design include a Golden Star flag, which is given to families who have a KIA relative. And there's also an American flag, both kind of simplified. In the center of the piece is a version of one of Anthony's sculptures. And beneath it is a version of one of the logs with some of the rings from the wood, and then some of the textures from the tools. So we're trying to pull a bit of each of these, but also keeping them not overly detailed. So providing a lot of iconic visuals, but also keeping it spare. I think like gold, red, and black on a shirt. I think the key message is this idea of a project like 17 that gives back to so many different people and is a way to, you know, not just honor those people, but also grieve and remember their stories too. I don't imagine everybody's gonna get that from this piece, but I think they'll get the idea that like, it's a really amazing thing that someone would make a piece that pulls them around the country, and they're not just making stuff in a studio where not everyone is necessarily seeing it. They're making it, they're bringing it, and then they're making it and bringing it. It's like, it literally is moving him all across the US, and that to me is very inspiring.